You're going to eat something today without thinking about it. Maybe you already have. Coffee, toast, maybe eggs. You applied heat to it, you seasoned it, and you ate it in minutes. It probably never crossed your mind that this single act of cooking your food is one of the most radical things a living creature has ever done. Because for most of human history, there was no fire, no heat, no kitchen. So what did ancient humans eat? And more importantly, what does the answer tell us about who we still are? We're going to go through the full diet of someone who lived 3 million years before you. And somewhere in the middle of that story, we're going to stop at a cave in England. What archaeologists found inside it will change how you think about the word civilized. I'll let the evidence speak for itself when we get there. But I'll tell you this now. Something you almost certainly ate this week traces back directly to the most disturbing part of what's coming. By the end, you'll know exactly what it is. But first, let's explore a question nobody asked clearly enough. We spend a lot of time asking what our ancestors ate, the diets, the macros, the evolutionary argument for meat or plants or fasting. But we almost never ask the deeper question underneath it. What eating uncooked food does to the body, to the mind, to the amount of time left over for anything else. Because the answers don't just explain ancient humans' diet, they explain you, your cravings, your instincts, and the parts of you that still behave like it's in the Stone Age. Go back roughly 3 million years. Our earliest ancestors, the Australopithecines, were not hunters. They were not apex predators. They were, more honestly, somewhere in the middle of the food chain, doing whatever it took to stay alive. The menu was almost entirely raw. Fruit when they could find it. Roots and tubers pulled from the ground. Leaves, bark, seeds, and whatever insects could be grabbed from under a log. When a big animal died, whether killed by something else or simply collapsed, our ancestors moved in, not to eat the muscles. The muscles were hard to chew, difficult to digest, and often already claimed by faster, stronger scavengers. What they were after was the bone, specifically what was inside it. Bone marrow, a pound of solid fat and protein locked inside the bone, accessible only if you smashed it open with a rock. Archaeologists have found bones from this period with deliberate percussion marks, which shows the evidence that our ancestors were carrying specific stones long distances just to crack open bones that other animals couldn't. Your body still craves that caloric density. Every time you reach for the fattiest thing on the dinner table, that is the same 3 million year old instruction working. The body learned in an environment of scarcity. It hasn't unlearned it. But here is what the history books leave out. Eating raw is a full-time job. Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, sharing roughly 99% of our DNA, spend 6 to 8 hours a day just chewing. Not foraging, not socializing, chewing. Because raw plant matter is extraordinarily hard to break down. The caloric yield from a raw potato is roughly 40% of what you'd get from a cooked one. The body has to work twice as hard to extract half the energy. This is why the cooking hypothesis developed by primatologist Richard Wrangham is so striking. His argument is simple but profound. The shift to cooked food didn't just change what we ate, it freed up the metabolic budget to grow a bigger brain. Before fire, our gut was enormous. A long, expensive digestive system built to process raw, fibrous food. As cooking made calories easier to absorb, the gut shrank, and the energy saved, roughly 20% of the body's total caloric budget, got redirected to the organ that needed it most. Your brain, the most expensive organ in the animal kingdom, built in part by fire. Which means your ability to ask this question, your capacity to be curious, to sit here and think, is directly downstream of someone, somewhere, learning to hold food over a flame. So before that discovery, what was the actual diet? Early humans ate whatever the landscape gave them. Tubers, roots, wild berries, nuts, eggs, grubs, termites, larvae. Insects were not a fallback. They were a primary protein source. Reliable, dense, and available year-round in the right climates. Some populations today, like the Hadza of Tanzania, who live closest to the ancestral pattern, still get roughly 15% of their annual calories from honey alone. Honey. Imagine what that tasted like the first time. Pure sugar in a world where sweetness was rare. The Hadza will walk hours and take dozens of stings to reach a beehive. That hunger for sugar is not irrational. That hunger is ancient memory encoded in the body. And then there is the thing about meat, the thing most people get wrong. Early humans did eat meat, but not the way we imagine it. There was no hunt scene with coordinated strategy. For most of this period, before systematic tool use and coordinated group hunting, it was scavenging. And the evidence suggests they ate parts of animals we would now find difficult to name on a menu. Brains, eyes, the most nutrient-dense parts and the first to decompose. But the most unsettling data point in this niche doesn't come from animal bones. It comes from Gough's Cave in Somerset, England, dated to approximately 14,700 years ago, which is quite recent in evolutionary terms. Archaeologists found human bones there that had been processed deliberately. The skulls had been carefully cleaned of flesh with stone tools. The base of each skull had been removed with precision. The remaining cranium hollowed out, smoothed at the rim. They were being used as cups. The long bones showed cut marks, spiral fractures consistent with marrow extraction, zigzag incisions that appear to be decorative, the same patterns found on ivory beads and bone carvings at other sites. This was not desperation. This was ritual. This was cultural. And this asks a question we rarely sit with. If cannibalism was in some contexts practiced, with the same care and intentionality as other cultural acts, what does that say about the boundary we draw between the civilized and the savage, between us and them? Because the people in that cave were anatomically identical to you, same skull, same hands, same capacity for language, for grief, for ceremony. They were you. There is one more piece of the diet that modern people find hardest to accept. They preferred meat that had already begun to rot, not out of ignorance, deliberately. Aged, fermented flesh is calorie-dense, pre-broken down by microbial activity and easier for the gut to process. The fat begins to liquefy, the proteins partially denature. Some researchers believe early humans had olfactory systems, their sense of smell, attuned to specific stages of decomposition rather than deterred by all of it. Which is interesting because consider what you consider a delicacy. Aged cheese is controlled rot, wine is fermented sugar, prosciutto is cured, dried, deliberately aged meat, sourdough bread is alive with bacteria, blue cheese, the mold is the point. Virtually every food culture on Earth has a fermented centerpiece, and every one of them is just a refined, domesticated version of the same ancient palate. Your most sophisticated culinary traditions are 3 million-year-old survival behavior in a nicer container. Here is the question that matters. All of this, the bone marrow, the insects, the fermentation, the ritual, it didn't just shape our bodies, it shaped our psychology. It wrote the operating instructions that you are still running right now. Your craving for fat is not random craving. It is a survival program written during 3 million years of caloric scarcity, running in a world of abundance it was never designed for. Your pull towards sugar is not a character flaw. It is the body recognizing the rarest, most reliable signal of available energy in the ancestral environment, and still treating every encounter with glucose as an emergency stockpile. Your preference for eating in company, the social ritual of sharing a meal, traces directly back to the campfire. The fire that made food possible also gathered people around it. The communal meal was the first culture. Before religion, before language as we know it, before organized society, there was fire, food, and proximity. Every dinner table you ever sat at is a continuation of that. And there is something here that the evolutionary data points at, but rarely says plainly. We are creatures who evolved in scarcity, in danger, in radical impermanence. And we are now living in abundance, in relative safety, in a world our nervous systems simply weren't built for. The anxiety, the restlessness, the sense that something is wrong even when nothing is. The difficulty with stillness, these are not pathologies, they are ancient adaptations that haven't caught up with the world we've built. Your body's central mechanism is 3 million years old, and it is doing exactly what it learned to do. The question is what you do with that knowledge. If you could take a human from 50,000 years ago and place them in your kitchen, same brain, same body, same basic hardware, they would not be confused by the abundance. They would understand exactly what they were looking at. Every jar, every package, every cooked thing in your refrigerator would read to them as one thing: survival, concentrated, a lifetime of foraging compressed into a room, a god's pantry. And if you could explain to them what you worry about, the deadlines, the social dynamics, the noise in your head, they would recognize that too. Not the content, but the shape of it. The same nervous system running in a different world. You are not separate from these people. You are continuous with them. The fire changed the diet changed the brain built everything you know, and all of it started with someone, hungry and cold, leaning a little closer to the flame,